However, we're now moving into two streams for the first time today. On stream one, where you are now, we will hear from another medalist, Sandra, who's lived with type 1 for 50 years, followed by Insulet Ambassador David van der Volet, in conversation with Diabetes UK team lead Charlotte. Sandra and David both share how tech over the years have helped them live their best and most independent lives. Sponsor ambassadors will not be answering any questions today, but sponsor representatives will be available to answer questions during their videos. Over on stream 2, however, we're talking about pregnancy with Professor Eleanor Scott and type 1 mum Charlotte Owens. Eleanor gives us the lowdown about the research behind the tech, while Charlotte shares her tech pregnancy journeys, resulting in the very adorable Spencer. Then Elliot will chip in too. There they are.
Hello, my name is Sandra Butler, and this is my story, my road, my journey with type 1 diabetes over the last 50 years. When I was younger, I used to describe myself to others as a type 1 diabetic, but that is not who I am, just something I happen to have and has been part of my life for the last 50 years. I think I deserve a medal, but we'll come to that later. This is my story and my journey about the technology that has underpinned and supported me in the management of my diabetes over these years. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 10 in 1972. I was taken into hospital, rushed into hospital actually, going into a diabetic coma at the age of 10. Cocooned in hospital for the first 5 days I was there following my diagnosis. I felt safe and protected by medical staff who knew about this condition and what they were doing with it. I was let out of hospital on Christmas Day and remember coming home and opening my presents and finding a chocolate selection box obviously placed around the tree prior to my hospital admission. My mum took it from me and told me I should have a cheese sandwich or an orange instead. I knew things would be different now, and the thought of living an independent life for a long distance away from my new reality in the pre-digital age I was diagnosed. I wish I could go back and tell that little girl not to be frightened or scared, because I've lived and continue to live a full and active life in spite of my type 1 diabetes. And the future is looking even brighter with the momentum of new technological advances being made. So in the early years of my diabetes, there was good, there was a bad, and there was a very ugly. So to test my glucose levels, I had to use tablets and urine basically. So I had to wee into a jug and then put a tablet into a test tube and then put 5 drops of urine into the test tube, and it would all bubble up and then go a certain colour, and it would give you the reading of what your glucose levels were. So not very practical at all, and yeah, a bit time consuming and a bit messy, to be honest. So I did benefit from new technology in my early years of living with diabetes, with the advent of syringes, disposable syringes. So I didn't have the arduous task of having to sterilise the glass ones or reuse them like the previous generations have been forced to do. They brought in this very interesting contraption called a syringe gun. So you had to put your syringe into the gun, and it was a way of, you know, helping people who were a bit hesitant about inserting their syringes, and you were meant to just pull it back, push the button, and it went in. But it was really clunky and often jammed, and it didn't really serve any great purpose. So that's why you probably don't see them around these days. So in my 20s, I had the opportunity to backpack around the world between 1987 and 1988 when I was 25. So I spent 9 months travelling across the States by Greyhound bus. Then I went to Hawaii, Australia, Thailand and India. It all seems really crazy to me now because, you know, being a type 1 diabetic, I was travelling independently on my own around the world. And you have to remember, at this time, there was no online connection or community. There were no mobile phones or World Wide Web that I could just tap into to get any support or advice or information, whether it be about my diabetes or my travels. I feel my condition had by this point created a sort of fearlessness within me. I was very independently minded and determined this condition would not stop me from doing anything, and I have never let it done that. And this intrepid traveller had new technologies that made testing glucose on the travels a lot easier. The cumbersome test tube was replaced by urine glucose testing strips and later by the finger prick tests, providing an easier way to keep tabs on blood glucose levels more discreetly and on the move. So I made earlier reference to technology, and before moving on to the next part of my story, I just think it needs to be acknowledged that a lot of new and more recent diabetes technology has benefited from the rise and expansion of digital technology per se. The advent of the World Wide Web, internet, and the rise of the mobile phone has provided a springboard not only for type 1 diabetes management, but also crucially connection with others, something I did not have as a child or a young person with diabetes in the 70s and the 80s. So the new generation of technology has been nothing short of liberating and life-changing for me. It was something I initially embraced. It was not something I initially embraced. I'd used the syringe for 45 years, and then I'd started using the insulin pen for a couple of years after that. So the thought was, and I think for a lot of people in the older generation like myself, it's like, well, this is working for me. If it's not broken, why fix it? Do I need anything? I'm managing okay. But you know what? I was encouraged by a friend who was a type 1 diabetic who was on the pump, and she said, you just need to give it a go. So I thought, you know what have I got to lose? And I can't say how glad I am that I've made that change. And it's just been an absolute joy after injecting for 47 years, not to have to inject 5 times a day that I was doing so. So it has made a huge difference. And the points here are just a few of the points. So immediately I went on to the insulin pump. The Omnipod is the one I'm on. The management of my diabetes improved quickly and dramatically. My HbA1c dropped from a long-term mid-8 to the 6s within just a matter of weeks. The fact that the diabetic clinic can connect to this and pick up readings makes support and communication regarding diabetes management more immediate, streamlined and robust. And the ability to exert more control, not only regarding diabetes management per se, but importantly for me around my exercise regime, which is a very important aspect of my life. It gives me the ability to, reduce insulin by temporary basal. And I can do this, prior to a class, or can even stop during the class to do this. So as a bit of a gym bunny and a gym freak, and the gym and exercise being really important to me, I can't tell you the difference that this new technology has made to me and my life. But I wouldn't say it's not all plain sailing in all of these things. Again, someone as a regular gym goer and someone I'm into quite vigorous exercise. I do a lot of HIIT type classes. The bulkiness can sometimes get in the way, when I'm doing a core class and lying on my back and I've got the pump, on my behind, it sometimes, you can feel it. I've also had an issue with pods coming off due to the vigorous exercise that I do, and obviously you sweat a lot. And I know this has been a common problem with a lot of people, but there are answers. And if you look online, there are different ways, and I found different ways that I can manage to keep it on. Another thing I would say, it would be nice if they lasted longer. At the moment, these last 3 days, and I feel like time comes around really quickly before it's time to change it again. And as we'll see with these sensors, they last a lot longer. I know these are slightly different ways of working, and obviously you have to inject insulin into this, but maybe along the line that will be another technology whereby insulin pumps can last a lot longer. So I had been using the pump for about a year when I finally got hold of the Freestyle Libre, and this was just incredible for me. I think, for a lot of diabetics, the pricking of your fingers to do to do glucose readings is actually more painful than actually doing the injections themselves, because obviously pricking into your fingertips is you know, the skin is really tight, and you know, that there are limited spaces you can do it. So the great thing about this was a dramatic reduction in the number of finger prick tests required. You know, I still do finger prick tests from time to time if I feel, you know, the reading is not quite accurate, or I'm too high or too low, just to cross-reference that. The great thing was it's really accessible with phone readings, and you know, just again, I take my phone in when I go to the gym. I take my phone into class, and if I'm feeling a little bit raw, you know, I'll just literally step aside and take a reading. So it's really easy to do. It lasts for 14 days, which I think is great. Really long time, and I've discovered one of the things again that comes up is that sometimes the stickiness or keeping it on is a bit of a problem. So you can see here one of the ways I use, I've got this stick on plaster that you can put over that helps to keep it there in place, and I also have got a band that I put on my arm which also helps to keep it in place and just increases the lengthens the time that it sticks to you, which is good. Also, I think with the Freestyle Libre it is quite discreet. Yeah, I've mentioned that you know, there is an issue, it's an ongoing issue with, you know, with them coming off, and I feel sometimes also that the control of accessibility means that I check more incessantly. Maybe in the past when I was doing my blood glucose, I'd maybe do 8 to 10 a day, but with this I'm probably looking at my screen a lot more times, you know. I couldn't even give you a number of times that I look at my screen to see where my levels are. So there might be, you know, again, some controls that need, you know, with us personally, in maybe changing our behaviors with that. And obviously it's still not quite as accurate as a finger prick, but it's all the, you know, the finger prick is always the sort of the go-to, just to, if you do want to check. So the really big and recent news for me is that I have switched to the Dexcom glucose sensor. So I'm really excited about this and just the possibilities that it can bring. So the amazing thing for me about this, well, one of the amazing things is that unlike the Freestyle Libre, you do not have to hold the phone up to your arm, because this has got a transmitter in it. It literally has the reading on your phone, and it's updated, I think, every 5 minutes or so. So I literally just have to look up my phone. I don't have to put it to my arm, which is a lot easier. So the other big exciting news for me, and I know there's a sort of big move forward to do this, is that eventually, and hopefully next year, that the Dexcom sensor will be able to speak to my Omnipod and self-adjust insulin delivery. So that would just be, honestly, after having diabetes for 50 years, I can't tell you how amazing that is going to be. Just not, I know that obviously that you still have to, there will be still monitoring involved, but the thought of not having to make adjustments myself all the time and just have that further benefit in place just seems, it just seems incredible. I would say with the Freestyle Libre, it is a little bit more bulky than the Freestyle, the Dexcom is a little bit more bulky than the Freestyle Libre, but actually I'm finding at this point that it does stay on a little bit better. But you can see from the photo above, I do wear bands that I found just online that are really helpful for keeping them on, particularly during exercise, and also because it's a little bit more bulky, that it doesn't get knocked, it's kept in place. So there are lots of other things that can further support you with the things that you're using if you do look online, and I would recommend that you do. So in conclusion, it's not always been an easy 50 years of living with type 1 diabetes, but the fact that I'm still here, fit, healthy, and leading an active life is power to the strength of both my own determination, and I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for that, but also the evolving technologies that have enabled me to do so. The fact there are more type 1 diabetics living to a ripe old age is undoubtedly due to ongoing improvements in the management of it, with new and improved technology a key factor in this. I feel privileged to have witnessed the ever-increasing technology landscape and strides being made in the management of the condition, and which I've personally benefited from. I think it's easy to develop an attitude as you age: if it's not broken, it doesn't need fixing. And I certainly know a number of type 1 diabetics my age who are not keen to embrace the brave new world of diabetes technologies, but rather stick with what they know. I would encourage anyone who is given the opportunity to try these technologies, please do try. You have nothing to lose but everything to gain. And I mentioned about that medal. This is my 50 years Alan Navarro medal that I received this year, which I'm very proud of. Thank you.